25 young soldiers who died during my tour, and I was responsible for collecting anecdotes from their friends and colleagues within hours of every one of their deaths, so that I could write an appropriate statement to honor their lives, honor their memory, so that our general, the commander of the task force, would be able to share it with Canadians back home. Now this was a special tribute that we started that during our tour, but it was damn hard, because you had to confront soldiers that were dealing with the pain of losing a colleague, and all they saw in me was a guy that was nosing around their pain and wanting this personal information about their best buddy who just died. And every time they told me to go to hell. They didn't want to talk to me, and I had to every time explain to them how important this was, and pull this information about this guy who loved to play the guitar, or who was this really gruff-looking guy, but he was really a loving teddy bear for his kids, or who loved to work on cars, and all of this information that would take away this idea that it was just another number, but made him a real person, and we would share that with Canadians. These were mostly young men about the same age as our own sons. I also witnessed horrible injuries at the Roll 3 hospital on the base. There was a 3-month period where we had more injured Afghan children there than coalition soldiers. I used to take journalists there regularly. One of the photos that I took made it on the front cover of Canada's nursing magazine. It was a Marzia, a young preteen Afghan girl who had lost her left leg high above the knee. She had undergone over 30 surgeries because of an insurgent rocket-propelled grenade attack. Now, there's something that happens in war and conflict, and I'm sure you can identify with that. When you see tons of people hurt, after a while you become almost immune to it, but then you focus on one. You see one person get hurt, and that one you remember, right? And I remember Marzia. I remember Marzia really clearly. I remember focusing, David Common from the CBC, he's on radio morning, CBC, he's a really good friend of mine, and we focus on young Marzia, and we actually got money for her to get a prosthetic leg. We can't do that for everybody, but I remember we got a leg for her. All this to say that I didn't know what those memories were doing to me. Many who suffer these types of injuries don't get properly diagnosed. In my case, it took more than 7 years for me to recognize that I needed help. Part of it was also time for the medical staff to recognize that I needed help with my mental state, and then to finally receive the care I needed to begin the healing process. Then finally one day, 3 years ago, I was severely triggered by an event in my office at National Defence Headquarters in Ottawa, and I suffered a complete mental breakdown. Following that event, I saw my doctor and told him I was discouraged, that I planned to quit the military, that I felt that if I went back to the office, I was likely to hurt someone. I was full of anger. When I told this to my doctor, his reaction, immediate action, was that I shouldn't tell him that. Yeah. And when my doctor said that I shouldn't tell him that, my reaction is I was triggered again. Yeah, I'm a public affairs officer. I've worked for generals and admirals at the highest level. I've worked directly for the Prime Minister's office. You know, when Putin invaded Ukraine, I was the one selected to go with Prime Minister Harper to Poland. I've worked at the highest levels of government, writing messages at the highest levels. And what do we say? What does a military say to its soldiers about mental health? Talk about it. Don't hide it. And I'm one of the guys who writes those messages, and I talk to my doctor, and I tell him, I open my heart to him. What does he tell me? Don't tell me. I just lost it. So I was triggered. I knew that that was wrong. I had to make him realize that. My anger flared, and it was suddenly turned towards him. But I like that guy. I really like my doctor. Why was he saying such a stupid thing? If I couldn't tell him how I really felt, who the hell was I supposed to tell? What was I supposed to do with all that anger that was eating me? Sometimes anger is the very thing that is needed to effect change. So I confronted him, and he finally did pay attention, and it was like a light went on. He realized what happened, and he apologized. He got me the help I needed, and I finally got a proper diagnostic for my trauma. Then the healing began, and it was tough to go at first, and a lot of medication and therapy. I spent over 35 hours a week in therapy and had over a dozen specialists following me for the best part of a year. The key part was in asking for help and finding the right people. A big part of my recovery was when I realized and accepted that I wasn't going to be able to pursue my military career. The day I hung up my uniform was a very sad day. I'm very proud of what I was able to accomplish. Despite the late time at which I enrolled. I was 42 years old when I put back the uniform on. I was training with guys that were half my age, and I passed through every test. But by then, it was time for me to realize that enough was enough. It was time to move on. I retired with 20 and a half years of military service, but I'd been working more than 40 years by then. So my identity wasn't limited to that uniform, no matter how sexy I make it look. As soon as I could, I got hooked up with a good psychotherapist and focused on various cognitive means to try and better control my anger, anxiety, and other symptoms. The type of therapy that helped me the most has been mindfulness stuff. After a while, I was noticing that some of the medication I was taking was causing me more harm than good. I progressed in my PTSD therapy to the point where I got rid of all my mental health medication. That in itself was a huge benchmark. I've never been a big fan of medication, especially mind-altering drugs. Part of my healing was learning to accept the new me. My mental health condition changed me, but some of the changes are for the best. In many ways, it's made me a better person. You know, I used to be a hunter. When I grew up on that farm with a 900 square foot home, I used to go hunting, and I was pretty good at it. I had 3 guns. I had a gun rack, and I used to drive around in a pickup truck back in the 70s. Oh, yeah. And I used to fish. I used to do all that stuff. I just moved to Nova Scotia last year, and we used to live by a river, and there's pickerel in that river. I used to be able to throw a line from my back deck right in the river, and there was pickerel in that river. Oh, yeah, walleye. Yeah, imagine. And my neighbor would come to the house and give me a walleye. And the last time he gave me walleye, fresh walleye, I couldn't even fillet it. I started crying. I've become a wimp. I couldn't kill it. I can't even drive over a roadkill. It's changed me that much. I'm much more aware now of the pain around me than I ever was. With this new empathy comes new opportunities, though, to embrace life beyond PTSD. I've heard that sometimes life closes a door, but it opens a window. I see my condition as a window of opportunity. I'm still relatively young. I didn't quite make Freedom 55, but here I am at 58. Slightly battered and bruised, but still seaworthy. We are in a pretty good financial position, about to build our dream home in a tourist community close to one of the nicest beaches in Nova Scotia on a big private lot with a gorgeous view of the Atlantic. I've got tons of stuff on my bucket list. I'm a motorcyclist. We live we're building a house near Queensland Beach, right off of Hubbards. Yeah. I've got a beautiful wife on my arm, 2 wonderful sons, and a bunch of fine grandchildren to spoil. So PTSD isn't easy, but I've learned that it doesn't have to define me. I've got a great life, and I'm going to have fun with it. All I've got left to say now is stay thirsty, my friends.